sorry about the slap. Didn't mean to hurt you, just stress. He'll be there in 30 minutes, okay?
The chaos all began with the man who caused the whole mess. But Jimmy, knowing it can't be undone, was willing to take extreme measures. Because for him, it was either this plan or prison. Under his lead, they agreed to stay focused, finish the hunt, cover their tracks later, and act like nothing went wrong. A helicopter touched down in the desert. Jimmy stepped out first, holding the door for Jane, the blonde clutching a duffel bag. She walked straight toward a glass house shimmering in the sun. The pilot gave Jimmy a sly grin and handed him a small present before flying off. Inside, Jane waited with an inviting smile. Jimmy paused by the door, then closed the distance and pulled her close. Their chemistry was undeniable, though he still had a wife back home, clueless about his double life. By morning, Jane reached for a drink, but the glass slipped from her hands. Her eyes widened. Outside the window stood a man with a gun. Jimmy introduced Jane as just a friend, insisting she'd only be around for a couple of days. Frank and the others exchanged teasing remarks, but soon everyone let it slide. Drinks by the pool, cigarettes, and laughter gave the illusion of a carefree getaway. That night, Jimmy revealed the gift from the pilot, a carved coyote. He warned it wasn't a toy. It carried a dangerous energy that could make people lose themselves. To keep it safe, he gave it to Jane, who tucked it into the locket she wore. Later, she turned up the music and began to dance, swaying playfully. Frank joined in, grinning, until Jimmy cut it short and pulled her away. The next morning, Jane found herself alone with Frank. His tone shifted, friendly at first, then insistent, pressing her in ways that made her uncomfortable. When she tried to step back, he grew more forceful. She pushed against him, but he tightened his grip. Just then, another man entered with food, saw Jane's distress, but instead of helping, he walked away, leaving her trapped with Frank. When Jimmy returned, the atmosphere was heavy. He rushed inside to find Jane trembling, begging him to call the helicopter and get her out of there. Outside, Jimmy lashes out at Frank for going too far. When Jane wakes, battered and barely conscious, Jimmy tries to patch things over. He offers her money, a job in Canada, anything to make her forget what happened. But Jane only wants one thing, that helicopter to take her home. Jimmy twists the blame back on her beauty, acting as if a slap on the wrist could erase what his friends did. When Jane threatens to tell his wife, his mask slips. With a vicious blow, she crashes to the floor.
He'll be there in 30 minutes, okay?
Later, Jimmy burns her belongings while his men prepare weapons. He even calls his wife, sounding calm, loving, and composed. While Jane lies outside, impaled on a branch, ants crawling over her body, blood dripping steadily, but she isn't dead. With her last strength, Jane gasps back to life. Every movement is agony, but her eyes lock on a lighter and her old music player just within reach. Using her earpiece wire, she drags the lighter closer, sparks a fire, and sets the brush around her ablaze. The flames consume the wood, splitting it apart, freeing her from the stake before it kills her. Jane collapses, the log still lodged in her stomach, but survival pushes her forward. She drags herself through the dirt just in time as the SUV approaches the cliff. From her hiding place, she listens to the men searching the ashes for her body. Frank shows a flicker of doubt. Maybe she's alive, maybe she can still be saved, but Jimmy won't hear it. He orders them back to the hunt. By nightfall, the men comb the desert, flashlights sweeping across rocks. They find bloodstains leading to a trail, but it vanishes by the water's edge. Jimmy orders them to split up. 2 men take the bikes, while Frank stays behind with the rover. Meanwhile, Jane fights through the water, surfacing only when the bikes fade into the distance. She drags herself onto the shore, hiding behind a dune. By chance, she ends up right behind Frank, who's stopped to relieve himself. His rifle rests carelessly in the sand. Slowly, painfully, Jane crawls forward. She grabs the weapon, but when she pulls the trigger, it clicks empty. Frank smirks. Of course, he never leaves a loaded gun lying around. He slams her down, pinning her, certain she's finished. But Jane isn't finished. Not yet. As he forces her under the water, she snatches his knife. With a desperate strike, she drives the blade into his side. He roars in shock, but she stabs again, this time straight into his eye. His scream cuts through the night, then falls silent as his body sinks. Jane pulls the blade free, trembling, drenched, but alive. After finishing off the brute, now the bike and backpack are hers. She speeds across the desert, but the fuel runs out, forcing her to continue on foot. Exhausted, she stumbles into a cave and sparks a fire with her lighter. Emptying the backpack, she finds a few supplies: a flashlight, a can of soda, and some scraps. She downs the drink in seconds, then tries to peel her shirt away from her wound. The pain is unbearable, sending her collapsing in tears. But then she remembers the locket. Inside is the peyote Jimmy once warned about. She swallows it down despite the awful taste. The hallucinogen kicks in quickly. The cave spins, music pounds in her head, and a strange voice screams "murderer" in her ears. She grabs the rifle, forcing herself to stay focused. Using the soda can, she cuts and flattens the metal, sterilizes a blade in the fire, and slices her wound open so the stick lodged inside can be pulled free. Blood gushes out. Without hesitation, she cauterizes the wound with the heated metal, holding on through sheer force of will until the searing pain knocks her unconscious. Meanwhile, Frank sleeps in his car until Jimmy wakes him by slapping the windshield. Frank stretches, then walks to the lake for a piss. While washing his face, something floats up beside him, one of their dead friends. Panicked, Frank scrambles out of the water, vomiting beside the car. Jimmy only watches coldly before dragging the corpse to shore. Frank storms over, blaming Jimmy for everything, but Jimmy shuts him down, insisting they stay focused. Together, they dump the body, deciding to blame his death on carelessness. Back in her cave, Jane wakes again. The can she used to cauterize herself has branded her skin, an eagle with the word beer scorched above it. The mark feels like destiny. Stripping down to her underwear, she straps the knife to her hip, grabs the rifle, and steps out of the cave a transformed woman. No longer prey. She is the hunter now. Scanning the horizon with binoculars, she spots Frank's car. Frank searches for her too, his nerves unraveling. He insists to Jimmy they should stick together, but Jimmy dismisses him and drives off on the bike, leaving Frank with the car. Jane takes position behind the rocks, watching Frank fuel up with a jerry can. She has a perfect shot, but hesitation creeps in. He reminds her of the lizards from her hallucination. Finally, she pulls the trigger. The shot slams into his shoulder, knocking him down. The recoil sends Jane crashing to the ground too, ears ringing from the blast. Jane's ears are still ringing from Frank's bullet grazing her. By the time she scrambles back to her feet, he's gone. Only blood trails and a discarded shoe remain. She follows the trail, knowing he's close, but unaware Frank has climbed higher ground. Perched on a hill, Frank steadies his rifle, his wounded shoulder shaking with pain. He fires. One shot tears a chunk from Jane's ear. She screams, blood running down her neck, but forces herself to keep moving. To slow him down, she smashes her flashlight against a rock, scattering shards of glass along the path. Frank steps right into it, a razor of glass cutting deep into his foot. He collapses in agony, trying to dig it out with shaking hands. Each movement drains more blood, but at last, he pulls the shard free, laughing hysterically through the pain. Barely able to stand, he limps to a car, tosses his rifle aside, and forces his bloody foot against the accelerator. Moments later, headlights bear down on Jane. Exhausted but defiant, she takes her stance as the vehicle roars toward her like a charging beast. At the last second, she leaps aside. The car skids, flips, and slams to a halt. When Jane opens the door, Frank's broken body tumbles out, lifeless. Now only Jimmy remains. Back at the villa, Jimmy sits alone, waiting. He calls out for Frank over the radio, but silence answers. Rage boils over. He screams, kicks furniture, then finally collects himself. He calls Roberto, the pilot, lying smoothly. The others had urgent matters. I dropped them at the airport. Pick me up in 30. After hanging up, Jimmy shuffles to the bathroom, stripping off his blood-stained clothes, pistol always in reach. The shower runs. A noise interrupts him. Naked, gun raised, he sweeps through the house, paranoid, every shadow a threat. Finding nothing, he returns to the living room. Then the TV flickers on by itself. Through the glass door, Jane appears, bloodied, silent, rifle aimed. Jimmy freezes. For a moment, it's as if he's not sure she's real. He tries to talk, to buy time. She answers with gunfire. Bullets tear through the room, ripping into his side. Jimmy stumbles, clutching his wound, blood trailing as he crawls away. Jane stalks him like prey. He hides, waiting for her to step into his line of fire. She circles carefully, using the noise of dripping blood to track him. The house becomes a maze of glass, shadows, and gunfire. Cat and mouse, hunter and hunted. At last, they collide. He seizes her leg, dragging her across the floor. With a grim smile, Jimmy delivers one of those villain speeches, blaming her beauty, her recklessness, anything but himself. It's his mistake. While he talks, Jane reaches into his wound, making him scream in pain. She reaches her weapon. One good shot, Jimmy collapses for good this time, dead on the floor. Jane stands over his body, bathed but unbroken. So guys, What are your thoughts on this ending? Do you think Jane did the right thing, or was there another way it could have ended? Drop your opinions in the comments. I'll be reading everything. And if you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more epic movie breakdowns.